everybody. This is a quick little video lesson to get you through this, very important lesson, I would say, called Stress and the Stoic Solution. So we're going to open this up. There are some Google Slides that are complete and some that you'll need to do some work on. So let's take a quick gander, see what that looks like. So, um, we are all feeling stressed, and we will, at some point in our lives, probably feel more stressed than we're currently feeling. It's just the way things are. Some of us might not be feeling hardly any stress, and that's great. What this activity, what this lesson is about a real way to deal with stress, and it's something that I do in my everyday life, and I want to share it with you. And it's really old. It's like 3,000 years old. Um, so I polled. That's not how you spell that, Roberts. I polled some friends in my class, and there's a lot of stress happening out there. And some of the stresses I heard of was COVID, the election, distance learning. And a lot of people are just really lonely, not being able to see their family or their friends, and that's really challenging. So, really, I want to talk about what really all of this is kind of related, I would say. And one thing that um, can make it harder for us is all the information about those things that we get, right? And we can feel like we have information overload, but I would argue sometimes it's actually underload. And I think this might help some of you, especially some of you who are really following the news and the current news cycle that we're in. So it's important to know where we are in the news as an industry, as a business here, right? So when I was a wee lad, um, there were about 50 different companies that owned the newspapers, radios, TV, basically all the news, everything you see and read to get your news. About 90% of it came from these 50 companies. Well, now we don't have those 50 companies. We only have six gigantic companies, which is probably why a lot of people argue that the quality of our news has gone down and it's become more about sensationalism. In other words, it's all about you gluing your eyes to the screen. And so when we look at some of these things that might be stressing us out, it might be a good idea if you are one to follow what's happening in the news or even in social media. Just know that the information we're getting from the news, 90% of it is coming from six gigantic corporations who might actually get more people to watch if they focus on these negative things as much as they do. Now, how besides just not watching the news or taking a break from all of that, how do we deal with it? Well, the Stoics were ancient Greeks. The philosophers really focused on improving one's self, and Stoicism is a school of thought that came out of ancient Greek. Basically, Stoicism says that the secret to happiness is a simple life, or is simple. It's to live like a Stoic. Basically, what that means is we need to be in control of our emotions. It's not a secret. Our lives are what we make of them. It's how we respond to the twists and turns in life that changes us, right? And it's up to us how we respond to that change. And we can either make that change be positive or negative. And Stoicism really is the art of controlling emotions while also pursuing happiness. Now, I know, Mr. Roberts, that's easy for you to say. How do we actually do this? Well, I'll show you. So, I'm sorry this slide is a little difficult to read, but I'll summarize it for you. Basically, you will have challenges, life's twists and turns. Now, we can separate those into two zones. And zone one is our zone of influence. In other words, if we put energy and effort, I could just be thinking or worrying or actively trying to fix whatever's stressing us out. If it's in zone one, that means we have the potential to change the outcome. If it's in zone two, it means it's totally outside of our control. And no matter how much we think about it, no matter how much we work at it, it really is, there's no way that we can change it, right? Now, I know that might sound like a fixed mindset, but it really isn't. Because what we're doing is we're focusing our growth mindset on the things we can actually control. So the idea here is to differentiate our stressors into two buckets. One bucket is a bucket that we have influence over and we can change the outcome and we can make things better. The other stress bucket is no matter what we do, it's not going to change things. Okay? So, this idea, by the way, comes from a guy named Zeno. And his idea was that if we let our emotions get out of control, that's when things can go sideways. So it's always good to try to keep our emotions in check. And one way to do that is when we're encountered with something, something that's going to stimulate emotion, especially a negative emotion, we need to try to figure out, okay, is this thing something that I can make better? Is it possible for me to change it? The answer is yes. Then we should focus on that stress and we should work towards identifying whatever that stress is and um, try to make it better. If it's something that's totally outside of our control, it's best to focus as little attention on it as possible. Here's a great little summary of this idea. The obstacles we face in life make us emotional. We know this, right? The only way we'll overcome them is by keeping those emotions in check. If we can keep steady no matter what happens, no matter how much eternal events may fluctuate. That is how we can be happier. So now we are going to dive in to this part. This is where you need to list some stresses in your life. A bare minimum of at least 5 different stresses. Okay? We're going to put them all in this big bucket, just like they come at us in life. One big pile. And then we're going to take whatever we put on slide 10 and we're going to repeat it over here, but we're going to separate them. So the bucket on the left, these are stresses that I have control over. Therefore, I should focus my energy on these. The other bucket, the bucket over on the right side, these are stresses that I do not have control over. Therefore, I should not focus my energy on these items. And you'll see the two statements at the bottom. Focusing on these is a productive use of time and will help me deal with the stress. Focusing on these, on the other hand, focusing on these is not a productive use of time and will make me more stressed. And if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense, right? If you're stressed about something and all of a sudden you put all of your energy into that thing, but you know it's out of your control, is that going to make it better? The answer is no. Be sure to push the turn in button on this assignment when you are all done, and thanks for joining me.